Imagine thousands of people wanting to access your app, but none of them can because your server is completely melting down due to the load. So this could mean a massive revenue loss and a damage to your reputation. But there is a very simple trick that I put everywhere in my code to ensure that API servers stay responsive even if there are thousands of incoming requests. And in this video, I'll show you how to intentionally fail requests early and why that makes your API more resilient. But first, what can cause your API to be unresponsive? First of all, a server, which is just a computer at the end of the day, has a limited memory and computation resources. And in addition, when your API server receives requests, several other components are generally involved in processing them. So in the vast majority of cases, there is a database involved, but if you work on a distributed system, there might be network connections with other services as well. This means that if the server is out of memory or CPU usage is very high, the response time of your API will be very slow. So you've probably experienced this on your own computer when you run a game that requires a lot of resources or when you are running a lot of applications. So there is a point where everything's just become very slow, and it's the same thing for a web server. But it gets even more complicated with APIs because your server itself can be fine, but you could still end up with unresponsive API. For example, if your database is unresponsive, that will affect the response time for your request. It's the same thing if you make network calls to other services that are unresponsive or completely down. Imagine that while your server is out of resources or a downstream service is slow, you keep getting incoming requests. This could cause your clients to receive error messages or even completely take down your site. And this is one of the worst things that could ever happen. Therefore, you need to take preventive measures to avoid that catastrophic situation. So the idea is to prevent too many requests from piling up. So one way of achieving this is to set a limit on the request processing time. For example, if a request handling takes more than 1 second, you simply give up and send a response message to the client. You can do this directly in your code or set it up at the infrastructure level, or do both to be totally covered. Of course, your client will still receive error messages when your API is too slow, but at least you have control over what response you return, and you prevent the problem from completely escalating out of proportion and taking your site down. And you give your system the opportunity to recover slowly. Even if some of the requests fail, the client can still retry and eventually get a success response back when your API is back to normal. And if you ever try to buy a ticket online on a very popular event, you know that sometimes you have to make many attempts to get to what you want. Timeouts are one of the most straightforward mitigation techniques you can apply to protect your servers, but they are not enough because if you are targeted by a DDoS attack, for example, or if you receive a very high volume of traffic, you can still run into issues. And you can watch this next video to see how you can put your API to the test of a high-low volume, but also simulate real-life traffic patterns, and this will help you identify potential weak points of your infrastructure and dimension your servers based on your needs.